Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for dialing in to today's webinar. Today we're going to be talking about the industry insights for the sport and recreation industry in Australia. And for those of you who I haven't met before, my name is Narelle Stefanac. I'm the National Client Training Manager at SEEK, and I'll be your host for today's session. Now, our session is going to move fairly quickly. We have 30 minutes to go through a rather fair amount of detail. So what we're going to do is we're going to move through things fairly quickly. But what you'll notice on your screens is that we have two things that you can do during today's session. You can either ask questions as we go, so type them into the question box that you'll see located in this little drop-down box area, and you'll also have the ability to download a copy of today's presentation. So to do that, there's a handout section as well. If you expand this, you'll see the PDF, and you can just download that and you'll have that straight away. Now, if for any reason that handouts function is not working for you on your computer or on your tablet, don't worry, we'll also send out a copy of the presentation either later this afternoon or first thing tomorrow morning, along with a copy of the recording. So if you need anything at all, just please let us know and we'll make sure we get across that for you. Now, in terms of the different sessions that we've run, so when we cover industry insights, it's slightly different to a lot of the other content that we have typically covered in the past. So we run a lot of things around ad writing and talent searching, but industry insights is really focused on unraveling the detail behind particular classifications that SEEK allows you to list your roles in. And then we take independent data from the marketplace, but then also overlay that with the SEEK data to be able to give you some really good informative information around what's actually happening and how you can use it as a lever when you're determining what's the best talent sourcing process to use and how do we actually inform our hiring managers so that we're making the right decisions all the way through that process. Now, we're covering sport and rec today, but we have covered several others throughout the last sort of 18 months to 2 years. So if there's other industries that you recruit across, please let me know. I'm happy to email these through to you as well. So we've covered a fair few here. We do have a few others that we'll be covering in the next up and coming months. So these are the ones that are still yet to be covered. But then we would have covered all of our 30 classifications. So if there's anything at all that you'd like to get your hands on, just shoot me an email and I'll make sure that we get these out to you post today's event as well. All right, in terms of how today's going to flow, we're going to break the session into 4 main parts. So the first thing that we're going to look at is more independent industry insights. So what sort of data can you collect from the internet yourself? How do you go about doing it? Where would you find it? How would you read it? How would you interpret it? How would it be useful to you? And then what I'm going to give you is some real sum-ups of those key findings for the sport and rec industry. So we'll take you through where you can go to navigate your way through this data, whether it's through today's session or post today's session if you just want to access it at any point in time. So we'll go through a fair bit of that just to give you, I guess, more of a macro perspective of how the employment marketplace is sitting in regards to the sport and rec industry. The next thing that we'll do is we'll spend some time breaking apart the areas where SEEK can supply some really good detailed information that is a lot more current. Okay, if you think about the industry macro trends that the Department of Employment will produce, and I'll show you how to access those, they're only updated every 12 months, whereas the SEEK data is updated monthly. So it gives you more of a real-time sense of what the supply and demand channels actually look like and how easy or difficult it might be to resource talent in that category. We also give you information around what sort of salary listings are being posted, so you can see and determine how competitive you might be in that space. And finally, we also give you behavioural insights. So if you are going to advertise, how do candidates actually physically search so that you can understand what you can do to really get the best results and optimise your advertising techniques. So we'll go through all of these in a fair bit of detail. If you need more training on advertising or more training on how to search for talent proactively, we do run separate sessions for those. So if you're interested in those, let me know. We'll shoot you through our full training calendar anyway, post today's event. But if you're interested in those, please let me know and we'll get them through to you. All right, so let's spend some time really breaking apart some of the independent data that you'll find online. A lot of data is actually produced by the Department of Employment. However, a lot of it's in Excel spreadsheets and really ugly, right? So hard to navigate and work out which part's important and which part isn't. So there's another website called joboutlook.gov.au, and I love this website because it acts like a portal. And what I've done is I've taken some snapshots. So I've compiled a whole heap of data just specifically around sport and rec, but pulled it from that website. So I'm going to show you that website in a second, but I'll show you the sorts of roll-ups that I've done to give you a perspective around what's happening in the employment category in Australia. One really interesting finding is that this category has really exploded in the last 5 years. So we've moved from over 75,000 people being employed in this category up to over 90,000 people being employed in this category. Okay, 96,200 people in 2013. So that's a growth of 27% in the last 5 years. Now, to give you perspective, most other industries are average around 5% growth over that same time period. So this has been quite enormous. So what we're finding is that candidates in this category are still in good supply, but the pressure to find really good talent is becoming increasingly more difficult as time goes on. And also that over the next 5 years, it's projected to continue to increase, not at the same rate, but at a slower rate. So here's the projection. They're expecting that this category will increase from 96,200 to 109,200, up a further 13.5%. And that's double the national average. Over this same time period, the national average for Australia is 7.2%, so it's close to double the national average. So just to give you some sort of perspective. Now, the reason why this is useful for you is that you can start to have really hearty conversations with hiring managers to say, look, this category is moving fast. If we continue to do things the way we've always done them, we may not be as successful as we once were. We need to think outside the square. If we want the best talent, we need to start doing things differently because this talent is in demand and they're going to move fast. So if we think we can get away with taking 8 weeks to go through our traditional recruitment processes, we probably won't be able to secure that talent that's going to be moving quickly and be offered roles at a quicker pace. So maybe we need to speed up the way that we actually go around recruiting the best talent into our business. Okay, really start to set that mindset because it's this sort of really big macro information that you can provide to hiring managers that will help you lever them a bit. Okay, often hiring managers come in, you know what, I've hired someone 5 years ago and I expect it to be the same when I go to hire them again today. The reality is the market's moved quite considerably over the last 5 years and it's going to continue to keep moving. So we need them to think differently, act differently, respond differently when we go through a recruitment process. Now, to break this apart, not all roles are actually growing at the same rate. Some are growing at faster rates than others. And the really big ones, so we're talking about sports coaches, instructors, and officials. It's the largest employment category, and that has a really strong growth attributed to it as well. So 12% over the next 5 years is what's projected by the Department of Employment. So that's almost double the national average. And then we look at fitness instructors and sports people, they're 19%. So that's way more than double the national average. So we've got to be really conscious. If we're going to be recruiting in these particular disciplines, what are we going to do differently to keep at pace with the demand that's going to be out there for these candidates? Now, one thing that might be helpful for you, this isn't how it's published on the joboutlook.gov.au website. What I've done is I've taken a compilation of information out of a whole range of one-pages and then I've put them into a table for you. But it's just a nice little one and I'd encourage you to probably print this out if you regularly recruit across these disciplines. But ultimately it gives you a bit of a snapshot of what candidates are looking like from demographic, educational, age group, gender sort of perspective. Now, the reason why this is useful, again, is if you have a hiring manager and they're looking for, let's say, a fitness instructor, but they want someone who's degree qualified, then you'd need to really challenge that. We know that fitness instructors are going to have 9% or projected to have a 19% growth over the next 5 years. We know that they had been in strong demand for the previous 5 years. And I'll show you some SEEK data as well, which is going to put these up in the top category as well in terms of supply and demand. But ultimately, the typical qualification for these guys is a Cert 3 or 4. So I'd be questioning, well, why do you need a degree qualification? Because 50% only hold a Cert 3 or 4. So we could be ruling out more than half of the candidates based on the fact that you just desire a university degree? Is it essential? Why is it essential? Can we be more flexible? Okay, because ultimately these candidates are going to be in low supply or in high demand. So we want to make sure that we're getting the right ones and getting them placed into roles as quickly as possible and not putting barriers in our way. So you can start to see how you can sort of maneuver through this, and it gives you a really good soundbite around what sort of salaries people are earning if they were working full time. So it gives you a gauge as to what that looks like. All right, so if they're only updating that data every year, we probably want to put an additional lens over that information with real-time supply and demand data. And that's what Seek collates, and that's what I'm going to share with you now. The supply and demand data takes a few different concepts, and then we publish them in a way that makes it really easy for you to determine what's the best sourcing method for me and how am I going to manage my hiring manager's expectations as a result. So the idea is that with supply, we know the supply of candidates because we can see them coming through our site. So we can see how many people are engaged. So how many people are searching, how many people are clicking on roles, and then how many people are going through and reading detail of ads, and then ultimately how many people are applying. So we can look at that whole engagement piece. Demand is sheer ad volume. So is there an oversupply or an abundance of candidates in relation to the volume of ads? And the way that we actually measure that and publish it from an advertising perspective is we look at the average applications per ad. And what we produce is this average applications per ad index. Now, the index is great because it gives you an idea of where things are going to be more difficult than others. Now, this is quite a small category. We only have 4 sub-classifications. So if you work across other industries as well or other classifications, there'll be a hell of a lot more range. But what we look at here is we can see that both PTs, so fitness and personal training, and coaching and instruction, these areas get the lowest average applications per ad. So what that means is going to be more difficult, right? If you're getting lower average applications per ad, you would expect that it's going to be more difficult for you to be able to resource these candidates through traditional methods. You may wish to advertise, but you may also think, okay, if we do advertise, we need to move on those candidates fast. Would we want to have a closing date and wait until everyone's completed applications and then start screening and shortlisting, or is that too late? Okay, would we want to proactively search for talent? Because you do have the choice. When you advertise on Seek, you also have free access to our talent search platform. So would it be more appropriate to not just advertise, but to go in and proactively seek out the candidates you want to just grab them? Okay, so if you're not familiar with talent search and you want to do more training on that, let us know. We have a webinar coming up at the end of the month. But it's just part of how you would use Seek. There's no additional cost. It's just part of how it works. When you post an ad, you have free access into that talent pool. And it gives you a lot more control. Okay, you don't have to wait for candidates to apply. The other thing I'd be doing, so if you're looking for a PT, this works really well because you'd say to the hiring manager, well, PTs are the most difficult role to resource for nationally. So how flexible are you going to be? And so you can start the dialogue there. And you also know that it's not just Seek data in terms of real-time supply and demand, but also that independent macro data from Department of Employment also indicate that there's been long-term growth in that category and projected growth is really, really strong for that category. So if you have real barriers internally around changing hiring managers' mindsets or changing the policies and procedures of how you recruit, I'd be using these 2 things as a lever to really get the things that you need to get the job done across the line. If you're on the other end, you can see other tends to get the highest average applications per ad. Now, other's a fairly broad bucket because we've got very limited subclass, but you could see that there'd be a lot of candidates sort of going in there that wouldn't fit into the other buckets. So if that's the case, you may need to use more screening criteria. You may need to put in what is your current residency status and then give them options. Or maybe you would like to ask them what sort of qualifications they have. So you could give them more screening criteria so that you can get more information around those candidates at the time of application. So thinking about what you're going to do in your talent sourcing process right at the outset when you're taking that job brief is really crucial. Now, if you know that it's hard to find PTs and you know it's hard to find those coaching and instruction candidates and then even managers, sometimes these senior leadership positions can be really difficult to resource as well. then you probably want to start thinking, well, would I take candidates from my local area or would I consider candidates from interstate? And if that's the case, then you need to know where those candidates are. So we also split out where candidates are most engaged by location. And the way that we create a lens over engagement is we look at when candidates not only do a search, but when active and passive candidates have physically clicked on your ad and then are reading your full job ad in detail. Because there's a level of engagement there which has enticed them into the ad, and there's an opportunity there for them to apply whether they're active or passive. And what we do is we look at how many times those ads have been viewed across the entire month, and then we've split them out by state. So what you can see is if you're looking for a PT, sure, New South Wales holds a lion's share of candidates. But if you're looking at coaching and instruction or management, Victoria holds a lion's share of candidates. So it's really interesting to see where the mix of candidates are. Depending on where you're located and where you're trying to get the talent from, you may have a strategy around talent sourcing for your localized area and then something slightly different for an interstate poaching. The really good bit with talent search is that you can actually be, say you might be in WA and you're looking for someone, then what you can do is you can say, also show me candidates who are willing to relocate to WA. And it shows you all these candidates who are ready for you to be able to tap them on the shoulder and say, hey, yeah, I've got a job for you. I'm interested in having a chat. So talent search just gives you that level of flexibility and proactivity that you just don't have to wait for candidates to search, find, select, and then apply to your role. It gives you the ability to go in and handpick the talent you need. So really think about which sourcing method is going to work best for you. It might be a combination of both of them, or it might actually be talent sourcing alone. So definitely have a think about if job advertising or talent search is going to be your ideal solution. If you're not familiar with talent search, because it is only really new, please let us know. We're really happy to give you some training on that as well. Now, if you're looking for PTs, you probably want to know if you're going to be competitive or not, right? So ultimately, we need to be able to understand what's happening in the marketplace. What salaries are being listed out there? Am I going to be competitive if I put my job up? And what we do is we take the average minimum that's listed and the average maximum salary that's listed, and then we get this scale. So you can see that if you're looking for a PT, if you're not paying anywhere between 48 to 64,000 as a range, then you may not be competitive. Okay, so you need to either move on the salary, or you might need to really highlight what the benefits are, highlight who you are as an organisation, why people come and work for your brand. Maybe they get work-life balance. Maybe they get to work whatever hours they wish. You know, there's a lot of 24/7 gyms out there. So is it because they have flexible hours, flexible shifts? Is it because you have discounts, staff discounts that would be really attractive and add to their pay? Maybe they get additional things like mobile phones or bonuses. So all of these things could be important. So if you don't meet the expectation that candidates may have based on what they're getting out of the marketplace right now, and you can't move the dial on your salary, then ultimately you might want to be talking more about what are all those additional benefits that we're going to offer. So use this as a bit of a gauge. Again, for those of you who have dialed in late, this is saved as a handout, so you should be able to download it whilst you're in this session and then just print out the slides that you like later, but we'll also send you a copy and a link to the recording as well. So ultimately, if you're thinking about all of these sets of data from Seek, if we take PTs as the example, if we're in, say, WA, we know that the lion's share of candidates aren't there, right? The lion's share of candidates are actually based in New South Wales, then Victoria, then Queensland, and then WA. So if we were going to source for talent, we'd be saying to the hiring manager that PTs are the most difficult role to resource for nationally. The lion's share of candidates aren't here. They're in these 3 other states. So how flexible are we going to be? The fact that you only want to pay 40 grand a year, well, that's not going to be very competitive. So how can we move the dial? Would you take someone with less experience? Would you take someone who's willing to learn? That sort of stuff is where it's going to become really useful for you. And then Damien's asked, are we able to get salary offering data for just WA? Yes, we can. What I'll do is I'll grab, if anyone wants their data for their state, can you please just email me, because this is a national roll-up, but ultimately we can get state-based splits, and we do every single industry. So in that suite that I'll send you, Damien, you'll have all 30 of our classifications, and then within there you just find sport and recreation, and it'll be split by WA. So I'll send you the WA summary, and I'll also send you the Australia-wide summary as well. All right. Now, what I'm going to take you through now is if you decide that advertising is the best method for you, then you want to know how candidates are going to search, right? So if you're going to post an ad on Seek, then you're going to want to make sure that you understand what candidates are going to be experiencing when they click on the different drop downs and depending on which device they're using. And that's probably key because 5 years ago, less than 2% of our overall traffic was via a mobile device. Today, more than 59% of our traffic is now via mobile. So you write one job ad, but then it gets pushed out to thousands of different mobile devices. And that's where a lot of the decision making is taking place. They're doing a search, they're finding your summary mixed in with everybody else's. How does it look? How does it sound? Is it engaging enough? If it is, great. Okay, I'd probably do this experience yourself, right? Open up your smartphone, search for one of your job ads, see how it competes with everybody else's. Would you click on it? If you would, then click on it, move through to the body of your ad, and then look at your ad as well and say, okay, well, would I want to read it? Does it feel too heavy, too dense, too overwhelming? Would it work better if I put in some bolded headings and created some structure? Would it work better if I was a bit more concise rather than so waffly? Would it work if I used some bullet points just to break it up a little bit? So thinking about what you could do to be able to make that experience for the candidate a lot more pleasurable. And then finally, click apply. If you click apply and it sends you off to an external application process where you might have to, say, pinch the screen so you can actually read it and see it and do all the little drop downs, if it makes you move through multiple screens, if it asks you to attach your resume and you physically can't, because on a mobile device you can't attach your resume unless you're in the Seek environment, then we've got a problem. And you need to be speaking to your Seek account manager about it because we have lots of solutions to make your application process mobile optimized. They don't cost anything. We just need to know that you need it corrected. We've had a lot of conversations with a lot of businesses already, but some are just taking longer to get converted. So if that's an issue for you, definitely raise it with us and we'll work with you and your provider to make sure that we get a more seamless application process for your candidates. Now, we also know that candidates search in lots of different ways. Okay, you can see all those blue bubbles, they don't add up. And they don't add up for a reason because people use multiple selections when they actually search. The really interesting piece, though, is that 69% now use keyword as part of their search. So we want to start thinking about what sort of keywords would they use? Why would they use a keyword over doing a drop-down? Well, a lot of search engines use keywords now. We also have really good technology, so if they start typing in a keyword, we can auto-interpret. You know, we understand what they're meaning by that word. We can look through and give them pretty good results. So people use keywords. And I'll show you the top 20 keywords for this industry in a moment. But the other thing I really want to highlight is location. Now, location is important to the majority of candidates. You can see 77% would include location as part of their search. So we want to make sure that not only are we selecting the location and the area where it's available, but if you can publish the suburb where the role is going to be based, I'd publish it as well. So write it somewhere, anywhere in the body of your ad, because Seek understands that suburb is also important to candidates, and we've built technology which will be released in the next few weeks, which basically if the candidate types in their keyword as a suburb, so they might put in the suburb, say Parramatta, or maybe you'll choose a different one because we have a breakdown for Parramatta. Let's say St. Mary's. So if they type in the suburb St. Mary's, we'll understand that they're looking to work in a particular suburb. We will search through all the ads looking for that location, and we will give boosters to those ads in terms of matching and put them towards the top of the list. So there's a real benefit in including suburb anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's in your summary, if it's in the body of your ad, anywhere at all, we'll find it and we'll render it through and we'll start giving prominence to those roles where candidates have decided suburb is really important and you contain the suburb. We'll match those two together and we'll push them towards the top of the list. So definitely keep that in mind. That's coming out in the next few weeks or so. All right, so you want to know the top 20 keywords? Here they are. The really interesting part about keywords is that they're fairly common. Okay, they're not unique, they're not, bespoke, they're not uh, specific to a particular organization. Candidates don't think that way. They're looking for a word that will give them the most relevant matches. So if you have a fancy job title, I probably wouldn't use it. I'd probably change it to something that's more common. Candidates want to be able to pass their eye through a whole range of job titles and go, yep, that sounds like me, yep, that sounds like me, yep, that sounds like me, and choose them. And they'll also keyword search specifically on job titles. So thinking about what are the ones that are going to give me the best match to candidate. We also see with this one that skills and industry feature a lot because there's quite a lot of diversity through sport and rec. Okay, you might be, say, in a gym, or you might be a specialist golf instructor. They're quite contrastly different. So people will use these sorts of things to narrow down, but there's a real appetite for entry-level opportunities. So no experience, junior, entry-level, graduate, trainee. So there's a real appetite for people to want to move into this industry. If this is something that you're open to, I would absolutely be publishing these terms in the body of your ad to make sure that you're getting cut through with the most appropriate candidates. All right, so I'm going to wrap up and then I'm going to open the lines for more questions if you have any for me, to have a think. But the key things that I want you to take away today is to really position yourself as a subject matter expert across the candidate market. Know where you can go to get your information. In fact, I didn't show you where you could go to get your information, did I? Let me do that now. You can go to this website, which I talked about several times, which is joboutlook.gov.au. Okay, now this is how you can get the information that you need to be able to compile all of those independent industry pieces that we were looking at before. So it's really good. You can search by alphabetical order, keyword search, or you can search across industry. But if I just type in sports, and then it'll give me a whole range of different roles which may potentially match. So if I say I want amusement, fitness, and sports centre managers, okay, I'll click on that one. You can download heaps of statistics, a whole range of information. Let's say you need to create a PD for this role, or you need to update a PD, or you're a recruiter and you've taken the job brief but you've never recruited for this role before and you need a little bit more detail around what's going on. If you just scroll down, it gives you a whole heap of tasks. Okay, they'll need to plan, organise the range and mix of entertainment, attractions, amusement machines and fitness programs to be offered by the centre. So it gives you some idea and scope of what the role actually does. So this can help you either formulate your PDs or formulate your job ad duties. So thinking about how you would use this information for you if you don't have the information at your fingertips. The other thing that you can do is go straight across to reports and links. I love this little bit because it gives you all of the data sets in a beautiful little PDF, which I'll click on now. And it sums up all the stuff that I just went through, okay, around the gender profiling, the demographic profiling, the 10-year growth trend in employment numbers and the projected numbers as well. So it gives you everything you need to know at your fingertips. These ones were published in 2014, so the 2015 ones will come out soon. So just keep coming back to this site and you'll get them as they release them. But they've got over 400 different occupations that they publish annually. So you should see that come out sometime mid this year. So it should be in the next month or so. So this is a beautiful little site just to navigate around, and I'd absolutely recommend you guys to go to it. That URL address again is just joboutlook.gov.au. So that's all you need to be able to get into it. All right. Nice little segue there. So use it. Okay, use it in conjunction with the salary data, the supply and demand data, the behavioural data that Seek supplies on a monthly basis to be able to make really good, informed decisions around what the talent sourcing method is that you're going to use, and really position yourself as a subject matter expert. So you can have really robust conversations with hiring managers to be able to say, you know what, I don't think that's the best approach. These candidates are in high demand, have been for a long time. We need to move fast. If you're not available for the next 6 weeks and to do interviews, then we need to find someone else to do it, or we postpone our recruitment activity. Take control. You almost have to push those hiring managers around a little bit and tell them how it's going to go down. Because ultimately, if you spend all your time trying to recruit and you're too slow, you may miss out on the best talent. If you set the bar way too high and candidates, they just don't exist at that realm, then you're going to be working what I call a unicorn brief. Okay, those candidates, it sounds great. Those candidates would be perfect in anyone's world. They just don't exist out there. So we need to understand what real looks like and then manage that hiring manager's expectation as a result. Finally, once you have all of that information under your belt, you can start to make really informed decisions. Work out, will advertising work for me? Should I be advertising and then proactively searching for talent as well so I have all of my bases covered? I'm not just relying and depending on the job ad to do its job. And then finally, maybe I don't want to advertise. Maybe I just want to search for talent first and work out how easy or difficult it might be and then make a decision. So all of these options are available to you. So thinking about how you'll transform the way that you've always done talent sourcing to really meet the real-time supply and demand challenges you're going to face within this category is going to be key. And if you can do that, you're absolutely positioning yourself as a subject matter expert in this space. Guys, thank you so much for your time today. And if you do have any questions, please post them now for me. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thanks, everyone.